Welcome to the virtualinstructor.com first ever podcast. And in this first episode, I'm going to respond to a question posed on the forum. How do I create smooth shading? Well, specifically, we're going to be talking about shading with graphite. There are basically three factors that influence shading in a drawing. The first factor, of course, is the graphite pencil that you use. The second factor, the application of the graphite. And the third factor, the paper texture itself. So we're going to take a look at each one of these, beginning with the pencil. I have four pencils that we're going to take a look at. The first one is an F pencil made by Barrel. The second pencil we have is a 6B pencil, which is a design pencil by Sanford. The third pencil is a number 555, which is really a 4B pencil. It's a general's layout pencil. And then the fourth pencil is a 7H pencil made by Durant. So let's go ahead and take a look at how these pencils behave on paper. Let's start by looking at the application process. If you take a pencil and you start making lines in a direction, those lines can cross over each other and it can create some value, and that's great for hatching and cross-hatching. But remember, the question posed was for smooth shading, and the secret to creating smooth shading for me is applying the graphite with small overlapping circles. And what happens is it gives you a lot of control over the gradation of value, which some people, that's what they're after in the drawings, and that's part of the secret. So the application by making small circles is secret number one. Now, let's take a look at the individual grades of graphite with the different pencils and see how they behave on paper. We're going to be starting with 70-pound drawing paper. So we're going to look at different paper types as well. And we're starting with the F pencil here. What I'm going to be doing with each one of these pencils is creating a gradation of dark value to light value. And it may look like I'm making diagonal lines to begin with here, but I'm actually making small ovals to apply the graphite to the surface. Again, that's going to give me a lot of control. It's going to help me better apply the graphite in a manner where I have total control over the pressure that I put on the pencil and the amount of graphite that is transferred to the paper as well, creating a range of value. Now, once I put down my first layer, I can go back and make things a little bit darker. That's another good point here. You can always make things darker if you want to. However, it's difficult sometimes to go back and make things lighter, especially when you're working with a material that's a dark material on a light surface. All right, now let's take a look at the 7H pencil. And if you don't know much about graphite, the different grades of graphite, the different numbers basically refer to the hardness of the graphite. So an F pencil is somewhere in the middle of the range, and a 7H, like we see here, is a very hard graphite. Therefore, the marks that a graphite of this grade makes is much lighter than an F pencil or a B pencil, which we'll see in just a moment. That's why the marks are lighter on the video here, because the graphite is harder and just is not capable of making super dark marks. And again, this is a 7H. All right, the next pencil we're going to look at is actually my favorite pencil to use for most of my drawings. It's a general's layout pencil. It has the number 555 on the side, but really it's most closely related to a 4B pencil. One of the things I really like about this pencil is that it does create dark values that you need in a drawing to create that contrast, but the graphite is harder than most softer graphites. Therefore, it keeps its sharp point for a longer period of time. Now, just to point out here, with the 4B and the 7H, you can see a little bit of a contrast in the texture there. That's created a little bit by the tooth of the paper, but also since the graphite is softer in the darker pencils, less of the graphite can fit into the grooves or the tooth of the paper. Therefore, it's creating that texture, and it's not super smooth. Remember, again, this is 70-pound drawing paper. All right, now what we're taking a look at here is a 6B pencil, which is very closely related to a 4B pencil. And again, like I've pointed out, this is 70-pound drawing paper. It's pretty much your run-of-the-mill drawing paper that you might buy at the art store. All right, next let's take a look at how these graphite pencils behave on watercolor paper. Again, we'll start with the F pencil. Now, watercolor paper has a much stronger tooth than most drawing papers. You can actually see it being picked up here on the video. So that's going to affect the smoothness of shading that we apply to the surface. With the 70-pound drawing paper, we were able to get a pretty smooth transition from dark to light with the F pencil. Here we're still getting a smooth transition, but you can already see the tooth of the paper is playing into that smooth change that some people may be after. All right, let's take a look at what the 7H pencil looks like. Now, I will point out here maybe something that you've already noticed. The harder graphites are going to be able to penetrate the tooth of the paper easier and are going to result in a smoother transition or smoother shading, if you will. The only drawback, of course, is it's hard to get really dark with the graphite if it's a lighter pencil like a 7H pencil. All right, moving on to the General's Layout pencil, which again is equivalent to about a 4B. You can already see here in the example that the tooth of the paper is really playing into the texture that's produced by the marks. And then quickly here we'll take a look at the 6B pencil. Again, the softer graphite is going to produce more texture on a heavily textured paper like the watercolor paper. Now, if you're really looking for that smooth transition, you need to make sure you pick the right pencil for the job, and you need to make sure that you pick the right paper. The paper that I'm working on now is Bristol paper, and Bristol paper is heavier paper. It's almost like cardstock, and it's got a very smooth surface to it. This smooth surface, or this smooth tooth, is going to allow us to create the smooth shading that you might be after. You can already tell here with the F pencil that we're able to create a very smooth transition between values by using the small circles. In fact, the tooth of the paper is almost non-existent. All right, let's take a look at the 7H pencil. Now, as you can tell, if you're wanting to create the smooth shading, the smooth transition between values, you got to have some patience. The small circles are really the key to applying the graphite in a way that creates that smooth transition. All right, moving on to the General's Layout pencil now. If you'll remember in the previous examples, the tooth of the paper was very clear. Here you can still see a bit of the tooth of the paper, but it's much smoother of a transition. And lastly, for the 6B pencil. So again, to recap real quickly, there are 3 factors to creating that smooth transition in value, that smooth shading: the pencil, the application, and the paper. If you're looking for that smooth transition in value, then Bristol paper is the way to go. For more art lessons, be sure to visit thevirtualinstructor.com. And don't forget to go check out the fan page at facebook.com/thevirtualinstructor.